Today's session, the last Behaviour Change Network webinar of the year. So just to introduce myself, for those of you who don't know me, my name's Dominic Ridley-Moy and I run the Behaviour Change Network, run a lot of lunchtime sessions like this, and also help organisations apply behavioural insights, running consultancy training and supporting communications teams. So today, really excited to be joined by Alex. So Alex from Whetstone Communications, and he's going to be talking about all things data, AI and behaviour change. So specifically, he's going to focus on how you can deliver behaviour change campaigns and the role of data and AI that underpins that. So really looking at kind of data skills, particularly if your budget and resources are limited, which is certainly the case for many, if not all of us on the call, and also a bit about how generative AI can help, looking at what its capabilities are, also the many opportunities from it, as well as a little bit about limitations and risks. And if you do have more budget, Alex didn't ask me to say this, but definitely he's the go-to person if it's all things data. So if you do need any help, I'll circulate Alex's contact details, so do get in touch with him, as you'll find out in a second if you haven't heard him speak before. He's got a wealth of information and experience in the area. So just a few housekeeping points. So we are recording today's session, so this will be available afterwards. Also be uploaded to CIPR's CPD database, so any members of the Chartered Institute of Public Relations, you can collect CPD points as well. And in a second, I'm also going to drop a link into the chat just to help me plan future sessions for 2025. So plan 3 webinars for everyone. So I'm just going to ask you what your campaign priorities are to help with that planning process. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Alex to take it away and talk about all things data, AI and behaviour change. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks, Dom. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all. Anybody who was on the previous webinar on Blue Sky ran about an hour and a half ago, hello again. You get extra points for loyalty. Right, okay. Dom, can you see that? My slides okay?
Yep, that's all good. You're all good to go.
Wonderful. Okay, brilliant. Well, yeah, great to be here. So we're going to take a look today at how AI, generative AI specifically, might be used to give you insight and information and evidence and basically, yeah, kind of help you with your behaviour change work, particularly as Dom says, if you've not got necessarily a lot of resources or time or money or all of them. So introduce myself briefly. So I am a data for communications specialist. I spent about 20 years working in strategic comms in local gov, 999 sort of services, higher education, which is where I did most of my work, and then charity as well. Whetstone was founded in 2021 when I had a bit of a sort of a light bulb moment of realizing that I could be a lot more data informed and started thinking and learning as well about the opportunities of using data. I got really excited by it and decided it's what I wanted to do, and Whetstone was born. So the work I tend to do these days, I do quite a lot of training actually, and sort of helping teams understand how they might, particularly corporate comms teams, how they might use data more to help generate ideas and thinking, and sort of get that curiosity going. I also do consultancy work in terms of, sort of more strategic, how you might actually embed sort of regular use of data within the work that teams do within campaigns, and then specific projects as well, where I get quite hands-on with the data, and I do really love a good data-driven, data-informed challenge, and getting my hands dirty and doing data scraping and using public data. That's really what I really enjoy. Increasingly, I've been asked to talk about use of AI for getting insight from data, which is what we're going to focus on today, but also broader than that, how AI might be used in comms. And there's lots of other people talking about AI in comms, so I don't tend to major there. But AI is a useful way into talking about data for campaigns and communicating and obviously prompting behavior change in this case. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn if you want to and see more about what I do. So I'm guessing, you know, because you are interested in behavior change and many of you will be actively involved in running behavior change campaigns, you will be hopefully bought into the importance of data. And I'm sure in Dom's other sessions that he's run in his training, he absolutely emphasizes this. But, you know, in case you need to be convinced, people like Shaoni, who many of you will know, who, you know, obviously is a kind of doing a lot of great work, with a lot of big organizations on behavior change, really is sort of an advocate for data in terms of, you know, obviously delivering the results, but also I find this useful when she talks about creativity as well. Sometimes data is seen as something which can be a bit of a creativity killer, you know, sort of numbers, spreadsheets, but really she advocates for using it to create ideas with impact and ideas that can change lives. And obviously many of you, that's what you'll be looking to do. However, and I come at this, I guess, no apologies for coming at this from a communications perspective, because that's my background and that's kind of who I work with. I realize not all of you might be necessarily communicators. It might not be your roles, but I'm guessing some of you are. A lot of you would consider yourself communicators, marketeers. The challenge, particularly in comms, is that data literacy, which we know is really important for work around behaviour change, is quite low across communicators. You know, it's acknowledged that it's still a development area. So a survey done a couple of years ago, 60% nearly say PR professionals said they lack confidence in their data literacy skills. More worryingly, I think about 40% said they presented a metric they didn't actually understand, which is obviously concerning. And then Mandy Pierce, recent work, really good work on digital comms benchmarking, concluded that comms practitioners in the public sector still lack data training and tools to be able to show outcomes and impact effectively. So there's a big challenge, there is, pardon the pun, a big data challenge for us as communicators, those looking to reach audiences through comms campaigns and activity. Oh, it's just gone dark. Hopefully you can still see me with my light. I think it was interesting, you know, Dom, I know we've had conversation about how you're experimenting with generative AI and how there's been some promising results. I was chatting with Russell, some of you may know, is a public health behavior change specialist, and he's been experimenting as well. And he very clearly sees a lot of potential for the behavior change campaigns he works on, talks about the research and insight analysis that is a real, you know, some of you will recognize this, can take a huge amount of time that you may not have with sort of tight resources and tight time scales. And he sees an opportunity to use it. And hopefully what I'm going to do today is just, I'm going to, you know, so I think first thing to say, you know, running behavior change campaigns isn't what I do for a living. I'm really interested in behavior change. I, you know, obviously I know about data's really positive data and research and insight in behavior change. And what I've tried to do is pull those things together and give you some ideas to think about in terms of how you might apply, how you might use generative AI in the sort of different stages of running a campaign, trying to change behavior. Some of it, you know, you might think, well, it wouldn't be quite what I'd do, but hopefully it does, you know, sort of give you ideas for how you might adapt or think about how else you could use some of the approaches in your work. So let's get into some potential use cases. I was saying to Dom that when I came on the call, I don't run live AI. I don't run live AI demos anymore because inevitably the technology goes wrong and doesn't work. So we've got a series of screenshots, but hopefully these are helpful for you and then we'll be sending them around afterwards. So a tool called Perplexity, which is really interesting. This is AI-driven search, which ChatGPT has just started to introduce, I think, in its paid version, but this is the free version of Perplexity. What I really like about Perplexity, if you were looking, say, to try and understand barriers and motivations, you're trying to change your behavior and you're trying to dig into, you're trying to do some background research, understand barriers, motivations within academic research. And I'm sure this is a process many of you go through. Perplexity is really nice because you can actually focus your search on academic literature. So it's AI prompting, generative AI, but you know where it's getting its info from. So you just kind of click that option there for academic. And then the question I've asked it here, and we'll talk about prompting a little bit. I'm not going to go too much into that because we could spend ages on prompting. But I've given it a scenario, and I've explained what I'm trying to do. And I've asked it to just stick to the last 5 years and give me a summary of the barriers that are being found to exist amongst younger people that may stop them from changing their behaviour. It's obviously just a kind of scenario I've come up with. And what we see here with what Perplexity does, it gives us the sources. So straight away we kind of go, okay, we know it's not just looking on Wikipedia, or we know where it's looking, and it's within, in the same way ChatGPT kind of rattles off its reply, it starts to it digs into the academic literature and it starts to tell us what it's finding. And if you see down just there at the end of that paragraph, that sort of last paragraph, there's a little reference, a little footnote, it's kind of reference point for, and you will be able to click on that if this was the real thing, and you'll be able to go through to the actual evidence and check that. So for me, I think this is great because it's sort of targeted use of generative AI, drawing on a big academic database, and obviously within that data set of academic work, there will be some really useful insight for you potentially, I would say. On that theme as well, I think there's some really organized. So let's say there's a behavior change community that we kind of have here today. It might be within an organization, it might be within a sector. This is probably one more for the think about for the future, but I think this could be something you could develop if you're running a lot of behavior change campaigns, and you have some kind of process where you evaluate and you have strategies and you have sort of documentation, all really valuable. Of course, the challenge is when we're all busy is actually using that knowledge without spending ages having to pour through sort of badly organized files and create something that's going to help you make sense of it. And I think generative AI really offers that opportunity. So if we took something like the comms files, which is is there and you're able to use, if you're not aware of this, bookmark it. This is all the entries into the unawards for the last 3 or 4 years, I think, which have the entrants given permission. So this is a nice repository of campaign award nominated campaigns. So you can imagine, can't you, using generative AI, for example, to go, I'm working on, I've got a small budget, so you give it a scenario, behavior change problem trying to address is low uptake of vaccinations amongst younger people. What lessons can I learn from these attached campaign reports? And this is just kind of me throwing in 5 that I found fairly quickly. You could have a huge repository of 100, 1,000 even, and generative AI is very, very good getting better all the time at kind of pulling insight from it. So it is all to do with the prompts that you give it. But in terms of trying to understand, kind of for other campaigns, what's worked, what approaches have been shown to be successful, you've got this type of thing coming out the other end. So this is ChatGPT, just to say I've been using. We can probably have a conversation about tools. If you're using Copilot, that's essentially running on ChatGPT. It's the same sort of technology. The large language models, there are some claims that some are better than others for certain bits of data analysis, but kind of think it's sort of the best way to establish that is to try them. But I think ChatGPT for me and Copilot are kind of good ones to use. But there we see some insight there. So that idea of showing benefit, which is obviously behavior change technique, so focusing on how vaccination enables social activities and travel. So it's kind of pulled that out of that that data set there, and I would think that could be useful that's another way generative AI might help you in your work. So looking at, harnessing data sets which are hard to use, which are a bit all over the place, and it's just a load of information, and actually using a human interface to interrogate it. The next use case I just wanted to sort of float was baselining and trend analysis. So, obviously when you're trying to understand the problem, or you're trying to look to change something, you need to understand kind of what the situation is, like what do we know about, sort of what happens at the moment, what are the relevant statistics, what is that level. So, baselining is obviously important, as many of you know, and then, what's the trends? So, for example, if I pick this example, if you were tasked with trying to reduce road casualties in a certain area, you'd need to also know what the trend is, like, because if it's a big upward trend and you're being asked to, reduce it, that's probably, I would say, not necessarily realistic. So, it will help you set things like KPIs, obviously. And generative AI is really, really good at crunching huge data sets and pulling out the insight you need. So if you've not got that analyst function, available, and I think the thing to say is that, this is public data, so it's all very safe to chuck into ChatGPT. Copilot, if you've got a corporate version of that, you can put, your own data into there, which obviously probably isn't in the public domain, working obviously with the relevant teams that own it and within data governance. But if you've got Copilot deployed, then, it's kind of a safe way to do it. But kind of don't put anything. I'd be very cautious about using anything outside of the corporate version of Copilot, although Google Gemini, if you've got that, or some version of ChatGPT do give some kind of guarantees these days that it isn't used to train the model, therefore it doesn't go anywhere. But I'd still be fairly cautious on that. But yeah, so DFT data, what we've got here is casualties, all the casualties in the UK for 2023, and then we've got a data guide, which kind of, so all the data's coded, so it's, in kind of the type of severity and the sex of the person who's injured is all coded, but the decoding is in this second document here. So what I've done here is I've downloaded two, and these are big data sets. They're hundreds of thousands of records. Each data set is probably 100,000 or so. 2023, 2022. I tell it what I've given it, and I tell you what I want to do. I want to establish a baseline and trend for men aged 18 to 24 who were seriously injured or killed. So attach those, and it goes, if we were looking at this live, it'd go away and start to crunch through this, and it'd say, okay, well, this is what I can see. I can see that the sex of casualty, if we're looking for male, that's coded as 1. So it's kind of looking at the guide. It isolates only men aged 18 to 24, so it kind of excludes everybody else. And it also interprets the severity. So again, it looks at the coding and goes, okay, so it's only casualty severity 1 or 2 or whatever it is, however the coding's done. And then it basically then spits it out. So 100,000 records, kind of probably not a necessarily hard bit of data crunching for an expert, but would take some time. Spits out, okay, so this is 2022 versus 2023. So slight increase in serious injury, decrease in fatalities. It could be more pronounced than that. If you with a different data set. And then I ask it to visualize it as well, which might help make that a bit clearer. So it spat out a visualize, not a bad visualization, to be honest. It does pretty good visualization these days. Sometimes to get it more fine-grained is harder, but so it's done all that for me. That's taken me about 5 minutes to do that, and crunched a lot of data. So that's the paid version of ChatGPT. And you might be thinking as well, okay, how reliable is this stuff? Well, and I'm going to say this again, I'll say this again at the end, the risk of hallucination with generative AI is still there, and I think it will always be there to an extent, depending on who you speak to. But I did some analysis, some different type of analysis. I was looking at how the, I think this was passengers in serious injury collisions. I was looking and I asked it to crunch a big data set. And I thought, I wonder if it's got this right. Is this right? And I took the data myself and crunched it, and it was absolutely spot on. But clearly, if you're going to do something really important with that data, really, sort of make a big decision, you're going to want to verify it, but it can help you get to these things a lot quicker, and find the nuance as well, and really interrogate it quite quickly. So there's another sort of thing to be thinking about how you might use it. In terms of understanding a sort of more in-depth understanding of a problem that you're trying to address. And I know Dom's done some, and I think Russell and a few other people I've spoken to have been started doing this, of how could you, crunch anonymized open text comments, qualitative analysis. You might have hundreds, if not thousands of them from a survey. How can you find the themes, the trends, the sort of, the kind of thematic analysis in there, which can be very time consuming, as you know. So I found some FOI'd open text comments, just to give an example, and this, I think it's only about 200. So this was Merton, who did a council who did a consultation around the future of the area post COVID, and so what people wanted to see. And so you can sort of, with some of my work that I do sort of get this into statistical sort of package and do thematic analysis and word clouds and all that sort of things. There's ways to do it, but I mean, generative AI is very good at essentially running that code within its own platform. So it essentially uses Python and to do these advanced things. So I've said, given it the prompts again, attached our free text comments collected during a consultation. I want to develop a behavior change campaign that addresses the problem that not enough people use local shops. What useful insight can I gain from these comments, I should say. And it's, I mean, that's not, I've only given it 200, but you could give it 10,000, 15, 20,000, and it can start to crunch through and talk about the sort of themes that start to come out from that. You can obviously ask it lots of different questions. You can really interrogate the data very quickly and relatively easily. And then, it suggests, because I've prompted it to think about behavior change, and I say it understands what behavior change is. It's been trained, sort of. So the way it works is it kind of will go, okay, well, what have I been trained on regarding behavior change previously? Behavior change campaigns. What have I read? What have I ingested? That makes, and it comes to its sort of, that's how it kind of knows what you're after, and it gives you insights there from that, which again you'd want to probably go, if you're going to do something really major with that, and sort of really kind of not quite bet the house, but so really use that for something and make a recommendation and take action. You'd want to verify it. You want to go into the data yourself and verify it. But again, it allows you to get there quite quickly, perhaps find things you wouldn't necessarily have found. And then the last use case for you was thinking about, I suppose, the kind of, so very aware that quantitative data will get you so far, but really, assessing whether behavior's changed. You want to look at qualitative, but thinking about perhaps out rather than impact, thinking about maybe assessing outcome from your sort of campaigns, if you're running campaigns. So what I've got here is representations of two data sets. I've managed to get hold of these data sets. So here's my campaign interactions, and I've got date. Let's say, for argument's sake, I've got daily data for this. So it's got that commonality of a data of a date. That's the kind of commonality between the two data sets. And then I've got signups. Let's say that's signups to a stop smoking kind of sort of service or whatever it is, some kind of thing that someone's proactively done, which is part of the how we're trying to sort of change behavior. So we've got those two data sets there. Now we kind of, I sort of had to just make these data sets up just to make the point. They might not be quite as sort of clear cut as that. You can already see there's probably a correlation between the two. But let's say it's not quite as clear cut as that. I'll put those two data sets into, in my case, ChatGPT, and I've said, I've attached two data sets relating to a stop smoking initiative. One shows campaign interactions, the other shows signups to a stop smoking service. What evidence is there that the campaign has been effective at prompting action? Okay, so I'm not got the time or skills to necessarily, or anybody to help me to look at a correlation there. I want some help with it, and it could be more complex data sets potentially, but as long as there's a common sort of data point, which is that in this case is the date, and there's, you know, that potentially it can do things more complex than this. It's quite a bit hard to see that, but it spat out a kind of, it's put the two data sets together, and you can see along the line along the bottom is the sign-ups, and then the line along the top is the campaign interactions. And so it maps those on top of each other, and it tells me there's basically that some of you will know correlation coefficients. That's kind of how one figure is affected by, you know, how they're linked effectively. 0.8 is a pretty strong positive relationship, so on that evidence there is a strong correlation between the two. So it's kind of helped me get a sense that yes, by having that data, and I've not necessarily needed to do that myself, AI has kind of indicated yes, there is an outcome there that looks to be linked to the work that I've been doing. So it's, again, it can pull data sets together and help you find trends and patterns and correlations within that if they're there, or it can help indicate the strength of those correlations. So I'm coming towards the end of my sort of presentation. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions. I appreciate also your own thoughts and your own experiences if you've been experimenting with generative AI, or even if you're using it quite actively. So I've talked about hallucinations. I think in terms of the kind of, you know, things we need to be aware of, hallucinations, they can be quite subtle. I think this is the challenging thing. So I was helping a public affairs company develop a sort of policy tracker around the general election, and we wanted it, you know, we had some good data, but we wanted, you know, to be able to sort of use AI to kind of interrogate it, and it was pretty good. And I was testing, I think this is good, it's coming back with the right answers. I was sense checking it against the actual data, and then it very subtly, you know, would give an answer that half of it was right, and then the other half, it was kind of, where's that come from, you know? So it's like it sounded very plausible and everything else was right, but then the last bit was incorrect. And therefore the challenge with AI often is if you can't trust it all, you probably can't trust any of it. Like, you know, what I mean is you can't just, you take it and use it, you know, just take it at face value. So that is one of the challenges. Until hallucinations are completely designed out of it, there is a need to be always aware that it will sound very good and it will mostly be correct. You know, most of it you'll check will be okay, but then it will just come up with something it's plucked that, you know, from somewhere else. You know, probably don't need to say this, but junk in, junk out. So if you put bad data into it, you won't necessarily get incomplete data, or you won't get a great outcome. So the quality of the data going in matters. But that's probably fairly obvious. I think prompting as a skill, there's a lot of talk about how, you know, the modern communicator and probably, you know, behavior change specialist in this case needs to be a kind of prompt engineer, you know, and have this great prompting skill. There's a bit of debate over that in terms of the AI will probably get a lot better at understanding what you actually want without you needing to be, you know, really, really specific about it. It'll learn, you know, as humans what we actually mean when we say something. So that, yeah, there's an argument that you shouldn't necessarily make, you know, build a, you know, do loads and loads of, like, you know, development on prompting, because it might, you know, it might disappear as an issue. But I think for now, it's a skill worth having. I think being transparent about use of AI, I think that's really important. So, you know, for your stakeholders, I think, you know, it used in the right way, in the sort of, you know, it definitely can really help and enhance. But I think there is an importance. I think everybody'd agree we need to be transparent about how we're using AI and how we're not, and what we'll use it for and what we won't. And there's good policies out there. You don't need to reinvent the wheel if you need a sort of policy to work with. There's some good stuff from GCS, and there's some good stuff from Cambridge University. They've done some good stuff on the sort of organizational policy. I've touched upon data security and governance. So yeah, if you've got a corporate co-pilot, you know, while still needing to adhere to all the usual data safeguards, but you can use that, you know, so it's pretty integrated into all your other Microsoft suite. But anything in the public domain, public data sets are really safe. Whatever that if it's in the public domain, you're not gonna reveal anything that's not already out there. I would say that free GPT, if you're using ChatGPT, the free version, or what's the other one? Not Perplexity. It'll come to me in a minute. I'm sure someone else will remember. Anthropic, Claude, that's it, Claude. They have got free versions, but the problem is when you put in big data sets in, you very quickly hit your limits. So if you want to do clever stuff with data, crunching data sets, you'll need a paid version. They're about $20 a month. You can get a kind of corporate version of ChatGPT now, which is a bit more expensive. But has some benefits. So yeah, free GPT will only get you so far, I would say. And then just on prompting, this is in the slides, so you'll get this. But there's I kind of think it's slightly patronizing to interns, that kind of summary there, but that is kind of what is generally used to summarize it. So the more specific you are, so in using this race model, the better result you'll get. So giving it, what role do you want it to be? Hence you saw me kind of saying, I am looking to run a campaign or, undertake activity to change behavior around X, and then say, I want you to do this. Here's some more context, this is the sort of, perhaps the think something about the budget or the time scale or the, the locality or whatever it is, and then clear instructions for what you actually want it to do. It's a fairly simple model, but it's quite a useful one. But yeah, you could summarize that as if you were giving instruction to a fairly experienced intern, asking them to do something. If you go along those lines, you'll be better than, it's a good way to think about it. You'll get you should get a good result. So final thoughts: learn by doing. As with so many things. So Andrew, who's Andrew's worth, he's really up on AI for comms in general, and he's sort of at the kind of cutting edge of that. I was involved with the CIPRs, as many of you know. So Andrew's work and Andrew's thoughts are worth following. But yeah, what he says really. And then Ethan Mollick, if you want to follow a public academic who is very accessible and is really at the cutting edge, a bit more kind of will put up academic studies but just great person to follow as well. And again, it's the same thing: see where it shines, use it, see where it shines, see where it's not so good. So I think in summary, a big opportunity, interesting. I've thrown a few use cases at you. I'm sure you might have, hopefully it's given you some ideas for how you might use it yourself. I'm sure you've got concerns and worries, which is absolutely, and that we rightly need to be using it cautiously and ensure human in the loop and understand about bias. We know there are the AI reflects the bias of society, the biases of society, the training material it's been created on. So we need to be aware of that. Absolutely. But yes, an interesting opportunity. In terms of how I use it in my work, I think I use it in that, that way of where I'm using it to do some of the heavy lifting. When I'm looking at data sets, I'm trying to sort of look at, to do thematic analysis. And I'll say, okay, what's interesting coming out of this? Or, perplexity is great. I think, really get a lot of value from that. But yeah, anything I'm really going to, bet the house on or do something major with or make a recommendation to a client, I need to have the data skills to be able to go and sort of sense check that. And so I think that's why I still think in the age of generative AI, it doesn't let us off the hook in terms of data literacy. We still need to have those skills so we can be sure we're using AI in the right way. So that's it from me. I'll stop sharing my screen and back to you, Dom.
Thank you, Alex. That was absolutely fascinating. It was. I was taking notes as you're going along for a lot of the questions that I've had about things like how do you kind of make sure that the data is accurate and stuff like that. So I'll come back to it in a second, but I'll just dive into some of the questions straight away. So there was a question from Juliet about how you kind of phrase the questions, and that was before you went on to give a bit more detail. But have you got any more tips, or do you have an explainer to show how you can ask the right questions and that kind of prompt engineering, and another thing around whether or not saying please makes a difference.
That's it. I like that. I'd forgotten about the please thing. So I think I maybe refer to what I said in the presentation. I think AI will get a lot better at, so AI is as bad as it'll ever be. That's the thing to remember. It won't ever be this bad again. That's one way to look at it. It will, Chat GPT 5, whenever it appears, and the other iterations will probably take away, sort of the need to be as good at prompting as you might be at the moment. I think that model, the race model, seems fairly well respected and adopted. I've heard a number of people sort of promote that, and sort of, again, it falls roughly in line with what Ethan Mollick says. I kind of take a lot by what Ethan Mollick says, because he's a proper academic, and he knows his stuff. I think in terms of the please, that is really interesting. A few of us have been running polls over the last year about, do you say please when you prompt ChatGPT, and most of us do. Ethan Mollick again highlighted a study that found that actually there does appear to be you get a better result when you say,
yeah, I've seen
please.
That as well.
Have you seen it? Yeah.
Yeah,
Now,
I've seen a few things. I was going to say, I put in a chat that I've seen good evidence, and actually I should caveat say, well, I've seen a few posts on LinkedIn, so I don't know if that's good evidence, but you know better than me, clearly.
Well, yeah, as I say, there was a study that was done. It found actually being obsequious. If you're obsequious, what that actually does is ends up obscuring what you're actually, so it's like, be polite, but keep it simple. Otherwise, if you start adding, you're overly polite, it obscures what you're actually trying to achieve. So, yeah, say please to AI, and hopefully it'll be nice to you when it takes over the world.
Not quite yet. Another question here from Kate about be interesting to have your thoughts on the environmental impact of AI, given the significant carbon footprint and energy use of LLMs.
Yeah, what a great question. This came up at LGComms actually, and my answer is probably the same as, I haven't got a really smart sort of neat answer to that. I think it would be interesting, wouldn't it, if you're working on a behaviour change campaign around environment, and actually, yeah, is that appropriate because we know AI, yes, it's very intensive, so I think there is something that this comes back to policy, doesn't it? What's your AI policy? How do you use it? How do you not? Do you start using it for everything? In which case you're just you're burning energy for the sake of it. When do you use it? I think this is something that your policy and you kind of should be looking at. But I think what I said at LGComms was, it's like a lot of technology, there's trade-offs, isn't there? Every technology we use, whether that's whatever extra tools we're deploying, WYSI tools, it all uses processor power. So it's probably a challenge. It's that for organizations there is that balance between, well, let's say you guys are working on enhancing people, changing people's lives for the better, health, sort of life outcomes. What's the trade-off between that and that kind of benefit and what AI can deliver and the environmental impact? So as I say, I haven't got a really neat answer for that. I think it's worth though thinking about if you're going to have a policy, particularly for your organization, and you've got clearly most organizations want to be environmentally conscious, you should consider that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And a different question, but just as interesting. Overall, do you think it's a time saver, or if we still have to sense check some of the answers?
Yeah, I do, but well, I think it depends what you're trying to do. Personally, I think it particularly if you've not got the skills that allow you to to crunch through 100,000 bits of data and weed out the age profile you want and decode it. I think what it could give you there is insight that you wouldn't normally be able to get to by yourself if you were having to, and a lot quicker, and you probably just wouldn't have the time to even do it, for example. I think there is, yes, you do then have to go sense check it. You do have to, I would say you do have to assume, because you don't know which bit's going to be hallucinated, you'd have to assume it's all hallucinated. So that's what I mean in terms of if something is really matters so much that it'd be a real problem if you went with it and then it wasn't right, then you've got to sense check that. If it's something more, you know, kind of less consequential, for example, in terms of, you know, you consider it less important, you can probably sort of, you know, go, okay, that's interesting insight. We'd probably, you know, we're not, you know, we need to know it's come from AI. But yeah, I think it does allow you to get, it allows you to get to things you wouldn't be able to get to yourself. And then if you go, this is really important, go get someone to help you sense check it, or, you know, sense check it yourself. So it is a really good point. Other people have made that, and I think it depends what you're using it for.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I was just going to share my screen quickly because while you were speaking, I've not used Perplexity until now, but I put in a question about, and I think for me it's kind of, it's a bit like there was a question also about kind of campaign planning, but I think it's the same as kind of thinking about how you plan a campaign. You have to ask the right questions. And I think there's a kind of, have you got the right data and do you know what the right questions to ask? So I kind of asked it, am I a local authority communications officer in a London borough? I want to develop a campaign to increase recycling rates to make use of the COM-B framework, which is a really helpful framework to think about your behaviour change campaigns if you haven't used it before. Write me a campaign plan with objectives, barriers to change, execution and evaluation. And I thought it was pretty good actually. It covered a lot of the barriers. So I think it was a bit blunt instrument. But then with something like this, I imagine if I, as a local authority, looked into the data more and found out that the issue was particularly in flats, then asking a follow-up question would be really, really helpful. So I think it's kind of like everything else with other data. You've got to sort of think, am I using it properly as well? But also what I really liked, I didn't realise, is that it seems to have related examples of different sources as well. So some other campaigns you can look at, which I thought was really, really helpful. And then I was just going to ask a really quick follow-on question from that. So when you're using it to look at data, particularly open-ended comments and stuff like that, the sort of thing that I've done is, and also to calculate stuff, is to say to ChatGPT, how do you know this is correct? Or can you show me the sources you've used? Or can you show me your working out? Those are the sorts of things I've asked it, but I just wanted to get a sense of whether you think that's a good idea, bad idea, or somewhere in between.
I think it's a really good idea, Dom. I suppose there's always the, you know, the chance that I mean, I've had experience of going, you know, it's told me something that I know is wrong because I've looked at the data set and then I've gone, no, that's not correct. You know, it's actually this, and then it goes, oh, you're absolutely right. You know, it is that after all. So it's, you know, it's sort of, in a way, sometimes you think, God, this is a bit simplistic, but yeah, I think asking for its sources, and that's something I do myself. So, you know, you're saying, you know, what evidence are you basing this on? Show me the sources. So ChatGPT is now good at that because that's how it's developed. At first, it, you know, wasn't even plugged into the internet, so, you know, it was an old data set. That's what I mean about it's getting better and better. Tim, just finally on that, Dom, Tim Berners-Lee, you know, father of the inventor of the World Wide Web, I've heard him speak, and he thinks that what will happen with hallucination is it will be squeezed out by having other AI in real time sense checking the answers. So you're layering, you know, you're getting powerful AI checking powerful AI, and there's two ways that could go, isn't it? It could either much improve the output, or it could actually compound, couldn't it, if both AIs are hallucinating in even a small way. So, you know, again, Tim Berners-Lee kind of says something you think, well, this guy kind of knows what he's on about, you know, if you're going to trust anybody. But I actually think that's questioning how it's got to its answer. Show me your workings. And actually, when you do stuff, I use AI to help me code in R, which is a statistical pro package, or get it to do visual, you know, analysis for me, and I can say, well, show me your source code. You know, I want to see the code, how you got there. So yeah, it's getting better at that all the time.
That's fascinating, thank you. So another question about whether you will be sharing a race model. So yeah, we'll be sharing a slide, sharing a recording, so you can read all that back. So this is a good question. So our team has been pestered to use a video generator for external comms, which to me looks like a poor product and possibly wrongly labelled as AI. Have you ever used this type of thing? Having researched a number of AI policies from other organisations, it looks like they're not suitable for external communications. I was just going to jump in quickly and say I've used quite a few myself, and yeah, I'm not sure I necessarily use it as a comms person just yet. What are your thoughts, Alex?
Oh, that's a good question. So two things. I think it's interesting to look at, so UK Gov do a lot of perception work on people's appetite and willingness to adopt AI, and I think that's a key thing to be keeping tabs on. What are people seem comfortable with chatbots these days, and again, it's like being clear on what you use AI for and what you don't, and I think taking a cue from others. Now, I personally think, I mean, it's every release of Midjourney, there's a product called Sora just being released, which might be worth a play. That's sort of cutting edge. I think can't remember. Is that open? It might be OpenAI, which again, I've just seen it in some newsletters the last few days, which again will be a step change in terms of the quality. I think there's something about, you think about producing video. When we produce a video, how authentic is it really when we edit it and we change the lighting and we do post-production on it? And you could go, well, that's completely, this is totally my opinion here. It's a very synthetic product, a video. It's not as is it? The ers and ums are all filtered out. We use digital tools all the time to produce a final product, a video. So there could become a point when the public acceptance is right. And just to say, if you look at the GCS guidelines, Government Communications Service, there's a line in there about digital likenesses or AI likenesses, which indicates to me they are saying they will start to adopt, and it could be for chatbots, it could be, I don't know how they're going to do it, but their policy is saying it looks like they're saying we will use AI to generate video. Like, it's not saying they won't anyway. It's not saying we will not use. It looks like they're laying the groundwork for it, which I think is really interesting. That they clearly feel there's some use cases there. So, I think you've got to think about your audience, haven't you? Like, and trust. I think trust and misinformation, disinformation, it all plays into it. So I don't. The stuff I've seen, I've not been. You can usually tell it's AI generated, but I think increasingly you won't be able to.
Yeah. And I think it comes back to the whole point about trust. And in all the work I do around behaviour change, I think one of the common themes around trust is that we, in terms of, I suppose, who we trust and who you can put out there as an organisation, the people we know, like, and trust, like real neighbours, friends, family, are the ones that kind of have the most cut through. So if I was working in an organisation and relying on AI generated video, I'd be slightly nervous about if you're not clear that it's from AI, being called out on it and ended up with a kind of situation where you're criticised. But also, I think it depends what you're doing. So if you're doing something like an infographic video, which is clearly a produced video, but if you're kind of doing something which looks like a real resident, that may cause some other issues. But yes, there was another question. And can you just recap quickly on Perplexity? And what that is, please?
Of course. So Perplexity is like, imagine Google, but AI driven Google essentially, and focused search. A bit like you can do with Google, you can do a news search, you can do an image search. So it's a search engine built using AI, using the sort of ChatGPT functionality, but allows you to do targeted search. So the example I gave was, you can go, right, I've got a question for you. Like, I'm prompting you as an AI, but I want you to only look at academic literature. And you'd have to look at how that's defined, but I'm guessing there's a criteria. It's got to be peer reviewed, and it's got to sit within it. It'll sit within a certain database, like academic publishing, it's a database, whatever that is. So it only goes there. You can also do it for social. You could do it for a while for social media. So it'd search on Reddit. So think about Reddit. This is probably interesting for you're working on behavior change, as a, all that unstructured data in Reddit, loads of it. I mean, I've done a bit of work scraping Reddit and forums before, because there's loads of, Mumsnet. There's some fantastic insight on different topics on Mumsnet, if that's the audience you're interested in. But I've heard Reddit are also developing their own AI. So you think about Reddit's got all that data, so much rich data. It'd be great, wouldn't it, if you could just interrogate the whole lot of all those threads. So that's what Perplexity does. It's targeted AI-driven search. It's free, the basic product, but you'll hit limits eventually. I think I've not used it enough to hit those limits, or you'll get, there's certain add-ons you can get. But Perplexity is it's a safe tool to use, because you're not really putting your own data in. You're saying interrogate these academic data sets, and it's robust. It'll have a certain so yeah, have a play with Perplexity. Really recommend it.
Yeah, and there was another question, which is about how good is AI at coming up with new ways of reaching the public, things that haven't been done before, or is it limited to tried and tested techniques that have been done by someone already? Which I think is a really interesting question. Probably actually hits the nail on the head, as it were.
That is a really good question. Well, obviously, I mean, AI is, the way it's trained on, like basically the internet. So it's kind of consumed a huge chunk of the internet, and it basically, it's an interesting, you're almost getting into philosophical questions about, sort of more what do they call it, AGI? But it's basically a very advanced form of AI that can think for itself, which is the kind of, it's almost like philosophy, people are saying that will come, but then there's doubt over whether it will. So I think what I would say on it is, I think there's a perception that AI can't be creative. And again, if you read Ethan Mollick, he looks at the studies coming through, there's loads of studies coming through on AI, and sort of testing these various things, and it constantly outscores MBA students and people who might think we're really creative. AI can never think as creatively as us. In terms of the ideas it produces, and I guess there's a bit of me thinks, well, what is original? Like, probably most things we might think have been done somewhere else before in some form. And I think that's for me, the power. It's just, it's literally, a lot of things are algorithmic. This is an opinion. A lot of things, I'm a writer by trade, and I might think, well, AI will never outright me because it's my kind of super skill. But writing's algorithmic. It follows a pattern, and computers are a lot better at us than algorithms. They do them a lot faster, and they can repeat them, So I think that's a really interesting question. I think, again, look, the next iteration of AI will probably, wow us, will probably it'd be amazing what it can do. So I think can it come up with, can it think on its own? That there could be an AI that does think and comes up with things that haven't been thought of before, and that's almost kind of like the vision for the future. But I actually think, because it's just consumed so much, it comes up with things that we probably hadn't thought of, and new original things, but they were already out there, maybe just in different domains.
Yeah, and I think it's also I've been doing a lot looking at how it can, I suppose, how it can help with existing problems and make that easier. So I think for me, certainly, that sort of is useful. So my process is around looking at behaviours and which behaviour do you focus on. So I won't go into details, but things like systems mapping, so where you're using more complex behavioural techniques to look at how to shift behaviour, doing some of the legwork around that and thinking which messages, which interventions are most likely to work or not work. I mean, I think for me, the problem is that I've got to kind of sense check it or work with specialists like yourself to kind of say, this is what it's done and said, is that correct, basically? And I think that's the kind of issue. It's really helpful for making things much easier, but it's just really working that through. Okay, so we are nearly out of time, so I could carry on talking to you for hours about this, Alex, but I'm conscious we've got 4 minutes left. I just will ask one really quick question, just in 30
Sure.
seconds. Are you able to use AI to do your research without being challenged for plagiarism? I'm not sure. Well, I think that probably comes back to the question of making sure you cite your sources, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And yeah, AI is so one final thing. Don't ever invest. Don't invest at the moment in AI detection systems. They're apps. They've been shown to be absolutely useless. That's different from plagiarism, obviously, but yeah, kind of AI. Yeah, AI detection systems are not worth the money that's been shown. They just, it picked up the American Constitution as being plagiarized, which, sorry, as
Maybe
being
it
AI.
was.
Well, sorry, being AI generated,
Oh,
it said, well, this
excellent.
has been copied from somewhere else. So it's loaded of junk. No, I think you're right, Dominic. Cite your sources, same as always.
Yeah, okay, well, excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming along and giving up your time. So there's loads of things we're going to share as in the follow-up email. So we will have a recording. If you're a CIPR member, do upload, log your CPD points, and we'll also share the slides with all the links to the various bits and pieces. So really interested to hear how you all get on with AI, and look forward to seeing you another webinar in 2025. So thank you, Alex, and thank you everyone for joining. Take care. Bye now.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you. Bye.